Glix, I thought you said Dallas was coming home from Monster Island.
I did. However, Jimmy's teleporter is having a tiny problem. I decided to get Dallas a ticket on the Galaxy Express 39.
Oh, well, that makes sense. When is he going to be back?
Sooner than you may think.
Okay, what is happening here?
Where are we?
Glix, give us a situation report.
Currently, we are on the planet Geekery. Be warned, our impossibility drive may cause distortions as we traverse this land. Impending impossibility engaging in 3,
Oh, gosh.
2,
Oh, dear.
1.
Hello, Devoted Geeks. Welcome to Con Talk, the podcast extension of Geek Devotions, a show from Devoted Geeks who are devoted to letting people know that they're loved. I'm Dallas. I'm so glad you are joining us for episode 77. It's been a long time since I've been on the show. I've been stuck in quarantine on a mysterious island in an undisclosed location named Monster Island, and currently Glix has picked me up on the Galaxy Express 999 or 39, however you want to say it, because well, there's a teleporter on the Monster Island, but they have a little problem, and we're not getting into that right now. But anyways, joining me today for this podcast as I go home sweet home, is like 8-time author, actor, dancer, suave buccaneer. I don't know what it is. He does everything. I don't know what I'm amazed at the stuff this guy does, and the director of the Film Vault himself, ladies and gentlemen, Nathan Marchand. How's it going, Nathan?
Hello, Devoted Geek. Actually, it's curator, not director.
Oh, curator, my bad. Well, I'm trying to get you on the board of directors. I thought if we use the vocabulary, that would work.
Possibly. I'm telling you, dude, we're here to talk about anime. Have you ever seen Evangelion, the Neon Genesis?
Yes.
I'm getting very Sele vibes from the board. I'm just saying.
I can see that.
Thank God that you're getting to me when I'm off work, because my gosh, they just implemented new uniform, the codes, everything's color coordinated, and I'm telling you, I swear they did this just to spite me. You know what the color they decided to make everybody in the radio show?
What?
Bubblegum pink.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody.
Jumpsuits we used to wear all the time.
Orange, I think orange looks good. Are you sure they weren't originally white, but somebody accidentally threw some red in there, and they're like, "Oh, we gotta do something with them."
It's like red versus blue. It's not pink. It's lightish red.
Oh my gosh.
Man.
Oh man, I love it. I love it so much. So for those of you who don't know Nathan's been on our show before a couple of times in the past, and he's actually done a devotion for us. He did one of this past season, talking about Godzilla, reading from his book that he has. Nathan, real quick, in like 2 minutes, can you tell our audience a little bit about you and what you do with Monster Film Vault, or Monster Island Film Vault, and some of your book side adventures? 2 minutes, go.
I feel like I should start it off by quoting Darkseid from Superman the Animated Series. I am many things. I've done a lot of stuff, as you've pointed out. Currently, one of my big projects is I am the curator of the Monster Island Film Vault here on Monster Island. And I have the podcast that comes out twice a month. If there's, because I put episodes out on Wednesdays, the second and fourth Wednesdays. If there's a fifth Wednesday, you get a bonus episode. So yesterday there was a bonus episode. I interviewed a guy who just published his own book. So that was really exciting. And so I do that. The tagline for the podcast is Seeking Entertainment and Enlightenment Through Tokusatsu. It's about film appreciation. We're not a review podcast.
Right.
So we're about learning everything about these movies and talking about what makes them great, whether that is the filmmaking techniques themselves or especially thematically. One of the big trademarks is I do a lot of research on the culture and history behind these to help put them into perspective, which is actually something that I did a lot when I was in college studying literature.
Right.
Everything into perspective is it gives you a greater appreciation. But as you
That's awesome.
mentioned, I'm an author. I have a lot of I'm in several anthologies. I've done novels, a lot of fiction writing. I've done a couple of devotional books that your devoted geeks have heard.
They have
Eric Anderson on to talk about them, and I read an excerpt from one of them for one of your devotional videos, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else.
Bro, you do so much. I don't know how you find time for all of it.
It's one of those things that people think that, like, especially when I'm thinking of the podcast, that you can't be creative and analytical at the same time, to which I say, hold that thought.
Let's put a pin in that. Let me show you something.
So it's like I can't turn off my creative writer brain when I do everything else that I do. I mean, right now I'm actually thinking back to when I was in college, and I was taking it was called Critical Approaches to Literature. And what it was called. Something like that. But it was about lit class, but the big focus was actually analyzing it. And we read what I thought was a brilliant short story called The Lottery. And when I read it, I thought, this seems like it would have been perfect for the Twilight Zone. So, because I don't know why, maybe because I was bored or something. The intro to my paper on that short story was what I thought would have been Rod Serling's monologue if it had been an episode of the Twilight Zone. And my professor loved it and made me read it in class.
That's cool.
He's like, I'm having people read their papers. You're going first.
Wow, that's crazy, man. So you're obviously a man who's talented. You're imaginative. You have a lot of creativity going on, and I want to encourage everybody, please check out Monster Island Film Vault, because it's a fantastic podcast. It's one of my favorite ones to listen. I to be honest, Nathan, I only have like 5 or 6 podcasts to listen on a regular basis, and yours is one of them. You're on the short list. So just giving you,
but me and Redeemed Otaku, Victims and Villains.
V&V, and also Geeks Under Grace. They're like my top ones I listen to on a regular basis.
So,
oh man, you would like Geeks Under Grace. They talk about geek culture as a whole, and they're normally like doing, hey, this was coming out, this was coming through, and it's really interesting. So you should check them out.
Yeah, I am admittedly a bit of an Uber nerd.
You are, man. You are everywhere, which is why I wanted you on here.
Certain things, and it seems like depending on what era of my life it is, I'm known for different things. Like for a while, I was the superhero guy. Now I'm the kaiju guy.
Right. Well, you actually got me because people like I met you a couple years ago when Celeste and I did King of the Monsters month for Geek Devotions, which is all about Godzilla. And so I was like, I got to bring this guy on. And so I brought you on, and we had a great conversation about it. You helped me out. You actually, you did like kaiju fact drops during this live stream that we were doing of a video game. Francisco from Retro.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And so
King of the Monsters.
Right. And so from that point on, people think I'm like this massive kaiju fan, which I'm getting into it. I really enjoy Godzilla and all that stuff. But you, sir, you were like, I look to you. I'm like, I don't know. Ask Nathan. But what people don't realize is you are in so many things. Also, like I'm looking at the background of your video. You got, it looks like Thor. You got a poster of the Amazing Spider-Man and all kinds of stuff. And so
Fantasy 15 specifically to that.
That's legit.
I will admit, I got it because when I moved out here, and one of my friends gave me some posters to put up in the apartment. And so that came with it. And even though I'm not a gigantic Spider-Man fan, I absolutely adore Stan Lee. So I'm just like, you know what? It stands. It's going up, so.
That's awesome. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to be talking about a very particular anime. Since we're on the Galaxy Express 999, I figure we need to talk about some anime together. And I'm a big fan of anime. I know you're a big fan of anime also. And so just out of curiosity. Oh, my man, you got the anime. That's awesome.
Name the 3 characters, I'll be impressed.
Let's see, we got the dude from Trigun. You got Ed from Full Metal Alchemist. And is that the kid from... Yeah, is that the kid from Digimon?
No, that's another Ed. Have you seen Cowboy Bebop?
Yes.
Cowboy Bebop. So it's Edward Elric, Ed from Cowboy Bebop.
That's cool.
And Bash.
That's awesome. All right, so let's get into this. So real quick, just briefly, let's talk about some of our interest in anime. I know that I'm interested in anime for a long time. I've been in it for a long time. But how did you get into anime as a person?
That's the interesting thing. I like to say I didn't get a proper introduction to anime until I was in college. But
okay.
I discovered actually that a lot of stuff I had seen growing up was actually anime.
Right.
I just didn't realize it. Stuff like Pokemon.
Right.
I didn't realize Pokemon was anime.
It is.
Although that was more what my siblings were into because they were more the target age for that.
Right.
I was slightly too old. And, or Digimon, that was also anime. So I knew there were a lot of stuff I saw that was anime.
Right.
That's why I say I got my proper introduction when I was in college, and then that's when I started seeing, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, you saw more grown up.
Yeah.
Cowboy Bebop. So
Right.
Cowboy Bebop was my first proper anime, as I like to say, and it's one of my favorites to this day. And then my friends decided to be insane and show me Neon Genesis Evangelion, it was less because they thought it was a good show and more because they wanted to see me react to it every episode. Because,
bro,
dude,
that's an emotional heart trip right there.
If I will tell you right now, whatever you do, don't watch the movies. I don't mean like the reboot movies that have been coming out the last.
Yeah. The original.
Death and Rebirth and the end of Evangelion. Don't. I made that mistake.
May have made that mistake in college when I was myself, brother.
I did not heed the warning and watched the end of Evangelion. And then all I could say for 15 minutes afterward was, "Oh, good God."
That's pretty much it. So you kind of came into anime at an older age when maybe you could think a little bit more, but you realized there was this exposure. And to me, I was kind of in a similar boat. I was exposed to anime from a very young age. I watched, there was just stuff that came on TV all the time. I didn't know it was anime at the time, but it was.
Dragon Ball Z was another one. I had friends who were into Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like I grew up with Dragon Ball Z. I grew up with Sailor Moon, all those type of things. But even before there was like, hey man, don't make me get Bex after you.
I now, thanks to the teleporter shenanigans you're alluding to, I have my own little clone saga going on. I have a magical sister. I'm telling you, life is never boring here on Monster Island.
I can see that. So, but I grew up with all these things, even before Toonami, man. There was stuff that came on. Oh man, love Toonami. But back in the 90s, I don't know if you remember the Sci-Fi Channel had this thing where in the morning times, they would play, on Saturday mornings, they would have this block where they play an anime. And that's where I got a lot of my exposure to anime in the early days. I watched stuff like
the Saturday morning spot specifically, but I remember, because you have to understand, I didn't grow up with cable.
Right.
The way I got to see anything on cable was to go visit Grandma and Grandpa. They had cable. Staying overnight at Grandma's house, Grandma and Grandpa's house, and then I'd wake up and there's and I'm like, oh, what's on Sci-Fi Channel? And I'm like,
right,
Sci-Fi Channel cartoon. Like, okay, what's this? And I was like, that's an episode of Transformers I never saw. Alrighty, and but then after that it would be something like Bionic 6. I'm like, what the frick is this?
Pretty much, man. It was a while back then, but like that's where I got introduced to a lot of early anime. I got introduced to stuff like Akira. There's some other really interesting ones. Oh man, Akira was a mind trip, bro. We'll talk about that one another day. But one of the ones I got introduced to, thanks to Sci-Fi Channel as a young man, was Galaxy Express 999, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Is this film? Since we're on the train. We're riding this thing out, and just so you guys know, we're going to talk about our personal exposure to it. We're going to talk about some of the major themes in it, and then the train's going to take a quick pit stop, and then we're going to board back on. We're going to talk about some review. We're going to actually give a review of the film itself, our personal thoughts on it. But let's kind of gear into this. Nathan, before you and I prepared for this, had you seen Galaxy Express 999?
Yes and no.
Oh, awkward. Was this like one of those outer body experiences? Was this like the Magical Girl clone that was going on?
No. As you know, I do a podcast on kaiju. There is a kaiju connection with this movie.
I was wondering about it. You said that. I was like, what is it?
Have you ever heard of Super Monster Gamera?
Yeah. I think from you.
Yeah,
I never watched it.
But it was the last of the Showa era Gamera movies before the 90s trilogy. So I introduced you to Guardian of the Universe.
Right.
This was the last movie that got made, and then there was no Gamera for 15 years. And
Oh, wow.
if you see Super Monster Gamera, you would understand why. You know how people complain that Godzilla's Revenge is full of stock footage?
Yeah. Oh, is this the one you were telling me that's like just stock footage of all the other movies? What?
And it's not even like Godzilla's Revenge, where it's just like, a couple minutes here and there, and they'll intersperse new footage in the middle of it. They'll put a new sound effect or music, something like that. It's actually stock footage used with class. And honestly, I think there's they did it because of budgetary constrictions, but I think there's a genuine thematic and story reason that it works really well. But I'll spare you that analysis because we need to stay focused. But
Right.
Super Monster Gamera was there's a lot I could say about that movie, period, but that movie was so desperate, so absolutely desperate to pad things out with stock footage. They didn't just stop at all the Gamera movies. No! They threw in the opening shot of Galaxy Express 999 in there.
Are you for real?
Yeah. Out of nowhere. An animated train flying in space just appears because they spliced in a clip from this movie.
Oh, man. That's like some straight up Bollywood stuff right there.
Sense. Why is this here? Why is this here? Why are you splicing in an anime? I don't understand, movie. Why? I have joked for a long time that there are 3 questions that have plagued mankind for centuries. One is, what is the meaning of life? Which apparently, if you talk to some people, is 42. But
I mean, it's the thing.
Why do bad things happen to good people? And the other one is, why does Super Monster Gamera exist?
For this podcast, that's why. All right, so that was your only exposure to Galaxy Express beforehand?
Yeah, pretty much. I had heard about it, only by name, and I just never got around to being able to actually see it.
Okay, cool.
I kind of wanted to jump at the opportunity because it always came across as something of an anime classic. Not quite on the levels of, say, like Ghost in the Shell or Akira or anything like that, but a classic in one form or another.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of that's because of the art, and we'll get into a little bit later. It actually won an award, a major award back in the 70s for the art that took place in it. All right, so you came into this completely raw as far as what this film is going to be. What about, because and here's the deal, when you talk about anime, sometimes you gotta depend on who you're talking with, and anime from different eras definitely carries a different feel, a different style. It very much reflects the way that filmmakers made films in those eras. And of course, art changes a little bit. And what I love about this the series, I'm sorry, not series, but the story, Galaxy Express 999, was actually done by a guy named Lihi Matsumoto. I can't say his first name, so we're going to say Matsumoto. I might be able to tell you. But Matsumoto, it's Leiji.
Leiji?
Yeah.
Say Leiji?
Leiji? I don't know. His original name was Akira. He changed his name to this as a pen name later. And so Akira Matsumoto, but he wrote this originally back in the day, and he had his own particular style of doing certain things. And but it's definitely locked into that 70s time feel. And I've watched a lot of anime from the 70s over the years, just because I'm interested in, I'm kind of a film nut. I like to watch things from certain eras and get a feel for things. Have you experienced a lot of stuff from the 70s in the past yourself?
Specifically, I can name the original Mobile Suit Gundam.
Yeah.
I
love that one.
Probably my first 70s anime, I would say.
Right.
And oh man, we're getting into some more kind of infamous kaiju stuff here. Well, in the United States, have you ever heard of Attack of the Super Monsters?
Attack of the Super Monsters? I have not.
Yeah, that was an interesting little thing, and one of my guilty pleasures.
Right.
Attack of the Super Monsters was actually a movie that was made in the United States, but all they did was they took the first 4 episodes of a Japanese television show, spliced them together, dubbed it, and called it a movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it was based on the show that they borrowed this from was a show called, and It's Japanese. It's a Japanese show, but the title sounds weirdly German. It is Dinosaur War Eisenborg. And you have to understand, this was made by the same studio that made all the Ultraman shows.
Oh.
And then I've been told that they had animators who went on to make Gundam working on this.
That would make sense.
This is a show that is both anime and tokusatsu.
Oh.
So
now, if you could do me a favor, explain to our audience what tokusatsu is, because that's a big part of your stuff. But if you could like define that just in like 2 sentences, or
tokusatsu is a Japanese term for it's called like special filmmaking or something like that. It's stuff that's special effects driven,
right?
It's film or television, and that could be kaiju, it could be superhero. I've even seen disaster movies that are technically tokusatsu.
Oh wow!
So if it's special, it has a lot of special effects and special effects driven, it's considered tokusatsu.
Right.
So if you've seen Ultraman, think Ultraman, except all of the characters are anime, but all the special effects are tokusatsu.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Really bizarre, especially points where they animate characters over the tokusatsu. It is really weird. And I highly recommend actually watching Attack of the Super Monsters because it is hilariously bad.
Oh man, I'll have to check. I love it.
The dubbing is ridiculous, and I love it.
Oh man, I love those actually.
The premise is essentially a team of superheroes with, I don't know, Power Ranger style vehicle things that can combine, or maybe it's more like Voltron, but no giant.
Right. Right.
They can combine together and all of that sort of stuff. And they are fighting an underground civilization of sentient dinosaurs bent on the world, who are led by Lord Tyrannus, who
oh my god,
is here on the island, but he's like a hobo. He just tries to use his mind control powers on the other kaiju, and they are unamused. So,
oh my gosh, that's funny. All right, so that's your experience with 70s anime. Now, are you familiar with Gatchaman?
Yes.
Okay, Gatchaman started off in the 70s. That was a big thing. So there's definitely like
I really want to see Gatchaman. I've wanted to see it for a long time.
Oh man, I've watched the one of the reboots of Gatchaman back in the 90s, and then later I found the original series back in the day. Fun story: I had a boss that I was working with at Hastings. I don't know if you guys have a Hastings over there on Monster Island. We used to have them all over the place here in the States, but they closed down, and I cried. But anyways, Hastings.
And I don't remember a Hastings.
It was mostly like I think a Southern thing, but it was like think of it as a movie store, video game store, boutique, bookstore, and a coffee shop all in one.
I think that's called heaven for me.
I mean, just about. I mean, it's just about there, man.
And it really is.
Oh, they're comic books. Actually, they bought out a comic book distributor right before they closed down. So, but one of my bosses, we were going through some stuff, and she's like, "Check this out." And I was like, I saw the remake, and she's like, "You need to watch this one." And so I did, and it was pretty legit. But that 70s animation style, it's very flat. Unlike you see modern anime, they're lacing stuff over with a lot of 3D graphics and stuff like that. But back in the 70s, it was very flat. The edit styles, because of the rate they're pushing out product, I don't think they could quite hit that 24 frames a second, 30 frames a second in their animation.
It was the speed that it needed to be made. It was budgetary constrictions and
exactly
for a certain amount of product. So they had to come up with these stylistic choices, try to get around it. And the funny thing was, those actually became just tropes of anime for a really long time, and to a certain extent, they're still used today. That's how influential it was. So the idea of, if you can't have a whole lot of frames, then the frames you have, you make them look as cool as possible.
Exactly.
Case, it was, you find the best poses for your characters and you keep using them.
Right. Or you reverse them and then use them again.
Yeah. Or you create the illusion of movement by making the camera pan around on a single cell.
Right. And so, I mean, a lot of creativity went into this stuff in the 70s. But somebody who's just watched anime from the last maybe 20, 30 years, you walk into the 70s anime and it's a little jarring. I mean, which is real. It's kind of rough. It's a little jarring, but it's interesting, to say the least, if you can get past that first little bit. So, Galaxy Express 999, that has a lot of interesting themes, in my opinion. And Nathan, let me know what your thoughts are on this. First off, it is what is considered a space opera. Now,
I love space operas.
my man, I heard Jimmy, your producer, likes them too. But
my favorite producer, his life is a space opera.
we're still not sure how old he really is.
I don't know how he's not dead. I mean,
I know, right?
I've seen the movie that was based on, a part of his biography, and it's a very definitive death. I'm just saying.
I know, right? Well, Matsumoto, he was known for space operas. He did stuff. He did this. He did Captain Harlock. He did.
I did not know this was a Captain Harlock movie going in. So the whole time I was like, what? Captain Harlock? This is
Oh yeah, man.
Harlock movie? No one told me this was a Captain Harlock movie.
Basically, if Matsumoto's
Again, one of these characters I've always heard about, but I've never actually seen anything. But I've for a really long time.
Oh man, you should check some of his stuff out. Now, the original stuff of Harlock, it's rougher to watch. It's definitely geared towards a younger audience. There's some new stuff like Cosmo Warrior and everything that's a lot more up to date. It's really good. There's also a kind of a 3D 3D animated Captain Harlock film that came out a couple years ago. That I think it's on I don't know, Crunchyroll, not Crunchyroll, Retro Crunch, no, something. It's on some of the stream platforms.
I'll check Retro Crush, and I just decided to make a proper account for Crunchyroll because they discovered they have Ultraman shows on there.
Oh wow, that's cool.
It's just anime, and that you had to pay to see it. No, it's you want to put up with commercials. So.
Well, Matsumoto also did a very popular anime called Space Battleship Yamato, which again was
also really want to see.
It's one of those ones I got introduced to it later in life, and I went back watching the older stuff. It's really interesting. What I find fascinating is a lot of people, they are diehard fans of some of these things. They don't see some of the connections. Now, I don't know about connections of Battleship Yamato into the Space Pirate Harlock, but a lot of his stuff, Matsumoto connected his stuff using Harlock and Esmeralda in different ways.
By the way, I'm actually going to be covering a movie on the Film Vault that I'm very certain was part of the inspiration for Space Battleship Yamato.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
From 1963. Now, they don't go into space in that, but it does have a flying submarine with a drill in front. So,
might have to check that one out.
Yeah. And what was it? But within the last year, I saw an anime a space opera anime that was... the Irresponsible Captain. I can't remember his name. It was a 90s anime that actually.
Oh, really?
I wish I could remember what it was now, but it was actually
I don't know.
Good, I thought.
Oh, cool. Let me know what it was. So, but here's I don't know if you knew this. The Galaxy Express 39, the movie, is one of those condensed versions of an entire series.
Kidding me. That actually explains some things.
It was like a 128 episode series originally. And they spaced it down into 2 hours, and a guy named Rentaro worked with Matsumoto to make this happen. Now, Rentaro is one of those guys who he's worked on all kinds of anime, and it's hard to figure out that he's done it because he adjusts to the writers and producers. Like, he's the most easy guy to work with because he's like, what do you want? All right, we'll make it happen. And so he doesn't actually have his stamp on anything. He did one of my favorite films of all time, one of my favorite anime films of all time, which is Metropolis, which was Akira Toriyama, not Toriyama, Osamu Tezuka's. I love Tezuka. Yeah. And he did Metropolis. He directed that.
I've actually seen that. It's been a very long time, but I have actually.
Oh, man.
And I'm pretty sure that was inspired by the German silent film. Yep.
Yes, it was. For those of you not watching me, I was just pointing at the poster for the German silent film on my wall. So, but he condensed this down into 2 hours, and when you do that, you have to ask yourself, what are you doing? Like, you had to make a statement. And so for me, I really believe the overarching theme is found in the opening credits of the film, where they have this poem that's being written up on the front end, and it ends with it's talking about there's for as long as there's been stars, and man has only seen it for a little bit of time, and long after man is gone, the stars will remain. And there's this line in it that says, while it lives, man himself, humanity looks up and considers its own destiny. And for me, I really feel like that's what the theme, the overarching theme of the film. And if you walk in understanding that, I feel like the film takes on a brighter note. It takes on a much deeper, like we're contemplating life. And the stops that you see take place, and we're going to get into some of the stuff that takes place here in a minute, makes sense. And for those of you who don't know, the way the film works out is you got a young boy named Tetsuro who is on a quest of revenge.
Tetsuro.
Yeah. But he's on a quest for revenge because Count Mecha, who is this mechanized individual, shot and killed his mom as a trophy, like literally, like hang her on the wall, like a dadgum moose trophy.
Yeah,
and it was.
We get to that part in the movie.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
To be honest, I mean, the scene where she gets murdered was bad enough, and then
right. Oh my gosh. So he goes on this quest. Well, the only way for him, his mindset is this: I'm going to go to the last stop on the Galaxy 39 and get a free mechanized body, and I'm going to kill Count Mecha. And it all kind of goes to crap at first, and then he meets this young lady named Mattel, who she sees him and she sees something in him. She's like, I'm going to help you, and so she gives him a free ticket
because she reminds him of his mother.
Exactly. And so they make a couple stops on their trip. Now, in the series, they make a lot of stops on the trip.
Sure.
But it's 128 episodes. And but this, obviously, it's a 2-hour film. So they stop in a few places. And I'm just going to run through a couple of places that of key things that kind of stuck out to me as far as the theme. And Nathan, if you could just chime in and tell me of your thoughts on this and tell me if you see some other aspects where this theme is. Or actually, let me ask you this first.
Before we get into this, I do want to kind of throw out this overarching thing that came to mind.
Yeah.
Which is, this is a hero's journey. This is a classic hero's journey. It's, in a way, it's the Odyssey.
Okay. Yeah.
Stop and think about it, where the character has a quest to go on. He has a place to go to. In the case of Odysseus, it was, I want to go home.
Right.
The kid's case, it's, I have to, it's not so much, not at first, it's not about, well, it is still about getting to a place, but it's also, I have to avenge my mother.
Right.
He has to make all of these stops on this train journey.
Right.
So in order to do that, which is much like Odysseus, he had to make stops on all these different islands and places that contributes to his journey along the way.
Right.
So in a way, he's not sailing the sea, he's sailing the stars, and instead of a ship, well, it's a ship that looks like a train because that was a little odd, I thought.
Hey man, it's Space Train, man.
We'll get to that, but he's setting sail on something. Except in this case, it's the stars.
Right. So yeah, and absolutely. I until this moment I didn't really thought about that, but really it is the hero's journey, which in of itself is a conversation about what is the point of man in our lives that we live.
Yeah. And what he does, he grows up over the course of this hero's journey. And if you look at other classic cases of the hero's journey, the hero's journey is, Joseph Campbell really made it well known back in the 70s.
Right.
Name to it, but and explain what it was, but it's been used by writers since ancient Greece. That's what I said.
Absolutely.
The Odyssey.
Right.
That is a classic hero's journey. Star Wars is a classic hero's journey. And the same thing happens. You have this young man who accepts a call to adventure, and then as it progresses, he grows. And The Hobbit is a hero's journey. And absolutely. He does things like he has these little rites of passage. So, for example, Star Wars, Luke is given a lightsaber. In The Hobbit, Bilbo acquires Sting. So he acquires the weapon by which they use to defeat their enemies and progress through their quest. And in Tetsuro's case, he gets a gun, which would probably terrify some people now.
Probably.
And that was something that I was thinking about watching. Like, underage drinking, gun. Yeah,
the kid drank milk. He drank milk.
Which just made me think of the future. Milk.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. So let me point out some things I saw along this way about these themes of life and death and what does it mean to be alive. That really seems an overarching thing. So his first stop was on the planet Titan, where Mattel gets
But
right, but
that's the kind of stuff that Jimmy would pipe in and say.
Oh, Jimmy. So, but this is the planet where Mattel actually gets kidnapped, and he's got to figure out why. And again, remembering that this is a originally 128 episodes, and they're condensing it down. It feels disjointed at first. Yep.
I was doing a stream party, with one of my friends for this,
right?
And he got lost because he's like, "Why?" That's why he's saying the fact this is 128 episodes that they crammed into 2 hours, because he was like, "How many ideas are they going to throw into this?" And for me, I just kind of went with it because I'm used to reading and experiencing big, grand science fiction universe.
Right.
So the idea that you can have a universe that's so big and there's a lot of stuff in it that you don't experience everything in it, it helps to enrich that universe, that world.
Absolutely.
So I was actually kind of fascinated by all the things that got thrown in here. But I was kind of thinking, like, you could make a whole story, a whole movie.
Yeah.
Or, a whole episode or something just on this idea.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is...
It's actually...
Well, that's the thing is, like, what I think happened, I haven't watched the entire series, is they picked out key stories that told this overarching thing. In that one, there was a lot of conversation where Tetsuo meets an older lady who gives him this gun, gives him a hat, which if you're a Harlock fan, you recognize the hat and the whole outfit. You're like, wait a minute, that looks like a particular character. But then she has this conversation about growing up and how she had to let her son go. A loving mother must let her child go so they can do their own thing.
Hero's journey theme that I mentioned earlier, because that's
right.
It's growing up.
Right. And so for that, like, that's a whole aspect. Like, what's the purpose of a mother? Well, you raise a child up and then you release them into the world. And, you and I, we're Christians, we're believers in Jesus Christ. And so we understand that, a man will leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife. They grow up and they go on to do their own thing to establish what God has for them. And so there is this conversation within right there on Titan of, hey, we have to grow up and we have to release things, even if it's scary. Because the mom, she's like, I don't know if my son's coming back. He may be dead. And at the same time, even in that mindset, she's going, I'm going to pass something on to the next generation. Like when she handed him that gun and she handed him that stuff, it's like, I'm passing on something special to somebody younger because I feel like this kid has something to go forward with. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so then we move on from there to Pluto because...
Which is still a planet. I don't care what anyone says.
So let's not talk about it. Like, when they says like now going to the planet Pluto, so it's like, do you think we should tell them it's not a planet anymore? I was like, no, it is a planet. But on Pluto, you meet a character named Shadow, who's a young lady who is having to. Her job is to care for all the bodies of people who have given up their bodies to become mechanized.
It is such a weird concept, and I love it.
Right?
It's such a great science fiction concept. Because what it is that it's a graveyard made of glass.
Right.
The bodies are perfectly preserved, and you can see every single one of them, and you can walk across this thing, and you can see all these people, and so that's freaky enough. And then you add on top of the fact that it's people who, if you want to look at it this way, they're not truly dead. It's just that they have discarded this body for another one, which then gets into the whole concept of, are they still human because now they have a mechanical body? So it's just, there's so many ideas just running around in that. And then because Mattel, not the toy company, but Mattel, it goes up to one of them and she kneels at it, and because she's visiting someone, and the idea that that's how you would visit somebody in a cemetery like this. I mean, just that concept alone is it's so crazy to me.
It is. It's wild.
And then when you fit it within the context of, you have to start asking yourself, is this person really dead? Did the artificial body, the robot body, has that been destroyed? Is this person really dead now? Or is it am I mourning what once was? I mean, there's so many questions that
right
asking about this.
Like there was so much depth and beauty in this one scene, in this one aspect of the whole thing.
What's fascinating about this is that Shadow is dealing with her own grief. So she's marauding around this place. She's essentially, what's the word I'm looking for? The gravekeeper? I mean, that's
kind of
undertaker. But she's marauding this place like she's a ghost because she can't give up her own grief. She's still mourning. So now she has essentially surrounded herself with death, if you want to call it that, or at least a semblance of death. Her appearance is very almost Reaper-like.
Yeah.
Ways. Like she looks like what you would expect to see to collect your soul.
Right. Absolutely. And what's even it? Right. It was. And in the film, you see her meet, and there's spoilers, by the way, in this whole thing. I'm sure it tells people that. But she takes Tetsuro to her own body, her own body that's laying there. And she talked about how beautiful it was.
That is so freaky to think about.
Right. But what's interesting is she goes,
mourning yourself. It's
right. But she's like, it was so beautiful that she could never have she knew she could construct something. So when she got her mechanized body, she didn't want a face for her mechanized body. And like she's holding on to Tetsuro, like she wants to hold on to him forever. And Mattel stops her and she's like, and she said something great. She's like, where's my notes here? She's talking about you can't harm others because of your own regrets. And that's such a thing that takes place in life as we're struggling on stuff. We're so hurt and we regret our own decisions that sometimes we lash out and we hurt other people at the same time. And that's not right. Like I have regrets, but
phrase, hurting people hurt people.
Exactly. But it's just not appropriate. I know I have regrets. I'm sure you have some regrets, but just because we have regrets doesn't mean we should allow those to cause us to hurt other people at all. And so again, we're building the story of understanding what it does it mean to be human, to feel pain. To a degree, becoming these mechanized machines was a matter of escaping the pain of death. But even in their escape, there's a new pain that's taken place. And that's the pain of, what have I lost as a human being? Well,
and it really, I mean, as corny as it sounds, they lose their humanity because we established very early on in this movie that these robot people think they are superior and hunt real humans for sport.
Right.
Because that's how Tessa's mother dies.
Right.
And
which is wild.
They don't treat her like has any worth whatsoever. They treat her like she's an animal. They gun her down, and then he just walks over and and just adds insult to injury at that point. He just walks over and rips off her little cloak, and it's just like she's just sitting there naked.
Right.
And it's just like, okay.
Yeah, it's wild.
Gun, you have destroyed a thing of beauty that had value, that had worth, and you're treating it like it's nothing.
Man, it's crazy. All right. Geez, that train whistle's loud. Which, I mean,
yes,
because you have to, because there's sound in space.
I had my noise canceling headphones.
Indeed. So, which honestly, that the sound of the train actually reminded me of another aspect that took place, which kind of brings about this whole deeper meaning of life. And that was on the train. You'll remember that Tetsuro gets told that the only way to find the time castle to find Count Mecha was to find Emeraldus, but she had to find you. And so he sees her ship flying by, and so he's like, I have an idea. Let me take a gun and shoot out a window and shoot the pirate ship that's flying by.
I have opinions on that.
So we're gonna get into those opinions in the second half of this, but he shoots it. Of course, she comes on board to figure out what's going on, and she interrogates him. And she finds out his plan, and she said something really important to me. And she reminds Tetsuro he only has one life to live, and she's challenging to really think: is revenge really worth this? revenge really worth you giving up the one life that you have?
Which is interesting because my understanding is that in Japanese culture, revenge isn't looked at as negatively as it is in Western culture.
Right.
And so you're seeing what honestly seems like a very Western idea.
Right. Do you think it's a
questioning whether or not revenge is actually worth it?
Right. Do you think this is an idea that slipped in post World War II with the Westernization of Japan and maybe some regrets from the what was it called, the
Imperial Japan?
well, no, like the what was that, what do they call those, the suicide plane bombers?
Kamikaze.
Right. Do you think it's a regret from the kamikaze jet? Because I mean, to be honest, they lost a generation of men doing that.
Yeah, it wasn't just the kamikaze pilots. They had suicide soldiers that would do things like they would jump out. They were on islands and they would run at Allied soldiers yelling "Banzai" and they wouldn't be armed, but the Allied soldiers would just panic and shoot them because they didn't know what was going on. They thought they were charging at them. But at that point they preferred death to dishonor. It was a very samurai way of doing things.
Right.
But I do think the fact that the Western influence has become stronger in Japan, especially post World War II. I mean, it already had kind of started with the Meiji Restoration.
Mm-hmm.
The Emperor Meiji started opening up Japan more to the rest of the world, but it exploded after World War II thanks to the occupation. So that wouldn't surprise me.
Right. Well, and that's the interesting aspect of it, I guess, is that we do see this westernizing. Even the train itself feels like a westernized thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure there were steam locomotives in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
We do tend to think of them more as an American thing or even a European thing.
Right.
You know? But yeah, my understanding is I do think they got over there at some point. But I do think, again, it's part of that Western culture influence.
Right.
There's a certain, especially in the United States, because we have, as Americans, we have mythologized cowboys,
mm-hmm.
the Wild West, and the steam locomotive is part of that.
Right.
So, the fact that the steam locomotive was really coming onto the scene in the United States during the Western expansion. So in a way, it's kind of symbolic of this idea of, go west, young man.
Right.
That sort of a thing. Striking out on taking a journey and striking out into the unknown.
Right.
Really, at that point, because that was at a time when there were still parts of the map we didn't know what they were.
Yeah.
And that was exciting.
Absolutely. So you have this whole thing, and so if we have this Westernizers coming in there, Emerald just really does bring this incredible point to them, like, are you sure this is worth giving up your life? And I really feel like that adds to the concept of what does it mean to be human, and what do we make of it? And then you flash forward a little bit later, where Tetsuro meets Tochiro, who is the son of the old lady he met back on Titan. And Tochiro, again, if you're a Harlock fan, you go, holy crap, it's Tochiro, because he's like the sidekick of Harlock, which, interesting, I did some research later. Tochiro is actually one of Matsumoto's original characters in a Western he did called The Gunslinger. And
really?
Yeah, he did a Western. I think I'm saying the wrong name, actually. It may not be The Gunslinger, but he did it was a Western. And, I'm sorry, Gun Frontier is the name of it. Gun Frontier. And, but Chotiro, but this character, he was the main character, and Harlock was the sidekick in that, apparently. And this is where if we get to Matsumoto, the way he links things up. If you watch, what is it called? My Youth of Arcadia, which was it's a Harlock film that you see that Harlock and Chotiro and can't say his name anymore.
Tochiro?
Yeah,
Tochiro.
Tochiro. They're linked generationally, going all the way back to the days of World War II and World War II. You had a Harlock and a Tochiro, and their family bloodlines connect and interweave throughout history from that point forward. So you see Tochiro here, and in this one, he's run his course. He had a goal. He wanted to do something. He had this passion, and but he wasn't able to do it. And he's like, it's all right. And he had a plan, and he was going ready to give up his life to kind of basically. And this is where it gets weird in sci-fi. He basically becomes the brain of the ship for Harlock. So, but again, you have this conversation taking place.
The only time I've seen that happen.
Thanks, sci-fi. But this is again that whole overarching conversation of what does it mean to be human and to be alive.
Well, and I'm surprised you haven't brought this character up yet, because we see her throughout much of the film, but the Glass Girl.
Yes, Claire. So what about Claire kind of comes out to you about her?
Well, it's just interesting because it's one of those things where there's a lot of sci-fi in this, but I feel like with Claire, they kind of threw the sci-fi rules out a little bit and went for... I feel like the character exists more for thematic reasons than for the actual universe. She fits in with the universe in that she has an artificial body and she gave up her real body, but she gave up her real body because she's essentially a bond slave.
Right. Well, she gave her mother gave her that body. She didn't give it up. Her mom thought it'd be cool to have a porcelain daughter.
Yeah. I thought she was trying to buy back her old body or something.
Claire was trying to buy back her old body.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So she's trying to buy that back. So she's working on it. So that makes a little bit more sense of why she's made of glass. Because why would you make a body made of glass? That seems very impractical.
Right.
But now I forgot about that tidbit. So thank you for reminding me.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating. So she's incredibly kind, but you very much get the impression, and she's very beautiful as well.
Right.
But you get the idea that she's also incredibly fragile, not only physically, but I think the implication seems to be that she's emotionally fragile as well.
Right.
She cares for people, but she can be hurt.
Right.
Very easily. She's very empathetic.
Right. But
and again, it plays with the idea of what makes us human, and I think with Claire, it's the idea being presented is that humanity is transcendental. It's not purely physical.
Right.
You don't have to have a flesh and blood body to be human.
Right.
Which it definitely fits in with the Christian worldview, because if you have and trust me, I could go on a rant about some of the theological things that I think are infesting Christianity and the church at this point. But I think if you have a proper understanding of, let's say, theology of the body, you understand that one of the things that makes human beings so unique is that we are both physical and spiritual beings.
Sure.
Angels and demons are purely spiritual.
Right.
Animals are purely physical.
Right.
We are both.
Right.
And that's what makes us different. And I think Claire really does illustrate a part of that.
Right. Well, and it's interesting because, like, in Jewish mindset, when you talk about the soul was not just like the spirit like we so often think about, but the soul was a combination of the body, the mind, and the spirit of man, all encompassing. And so, like, which when you think about it that way, it's versus like, what good is it for a man to gain the whole world but lose his soul? Man, that takes on so much more dimension, because it's like, you're gaining the whole world, but you're doing damage to your body because you're not sleeping, or you're losing literally your mind. You're sacrificing emotional stress or everything, or your spirit man dying. And, and so there's a lot that goes into that. And I see your point. So Claire does a great job.
You are sacrificing your very self.
Right.
At that point.
Exactly.
And to gain what?
Right.
To kind of back up a little bit is why I've never understood this mindset that a lot of people had, where they would think, oh yeah, I'm going to work 60, 70, 80 hours. I don't know how you work 80 hours a week, but 80 hours a week, and I'm going to have all this money. All right, because I need all this money. I was like, what's the point?
Right.
You have no time to do anything with it,
right,
or enjoy it.
Right.
What's the point in having all this money, all this wealth, if you have no time to enjoy the fruits of your labor?
Sure. Or if you're not working to a goal for a specific goal. I had a buddy of mine, and he worked his butt off recently. And in fact, I'll plug him. His name is Kevin. He runs a show on YouTube called The Dapper Man, where he does film reviews. And Kevin,
an episode was
he worked his butt off, crazy hours to pay off debt, to become debt free. Then you have a goal, and you're sacrificing yourself for a goal. And we even see that in Claire. She sacrificed her being. Her fragile body, her fragileness became her biggest strength. Because she was so empathetic and she cared, she sacrificed herself to save Tetsuro at the end of the film. And I feel like that's something that we lose sight of. Is sometimes we look at weakness as something that just needs to go away, but sometimes our weakness is actually our biggest strength in whatever situation we are in life.
This just dawned on me. She actually, in a lot of ways, might be the most vulnerable character in this entire film.
Right.
If you stop and think about it. I mean, she's made of glass, so she's see-through.
Right.
Can't hide. And I don't want to sound crude, but let's be honest, she's essentially naked.
Right. Oh yeah. She's barren.
It's featureless nudity.
Right.
And it's lessened by the fact that she's glass.
Right.
But she's proportioned appropriately. We'll say that much.
Exactly.
And I do think there are points where Tetsuro is looking at her a little bit longingly. But
well, he blushed quite a bit, man.
yeah. But I'm glad that was more implied than
yeah.
This had been a lesser anime.
Yeah. They definitely had class back then.
So if you stop to think about it, so you can see right through her, and she is essentially laid bare before the whole world.
Right.
These are all thoughts that just occurred to me.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of nuts to think about.
She's really an interesting, complex character for somebody that's in it so little. I'm curious if she plays a bigger part at all in the series. But again, she sacrifices herself. In some ways, she's more human than some of the other human characters in the series or in the movie itself. And so one of the final points I want to bring up about the conversation of what does it mean to be human is what takes place with Count Mega when he is destroyed and one of his helpmates is kind of holding on to him. And she brings up this interesting fact that at one point he was a man and that he made a choice to become this machine and he become this monster. And but she asks him to take pity on him because at one point he was a man. It's just that he made poor choices, and sometimes there are people in our lives, in their walk of life, they make poor choices and they become a monster of some sort. And that it's yes, I mean it's terrible some things, but we should have pity on them because they've lost their soul. Basically, they've gained the whole world and they've lost their soul. And sadly, there's people that are surrounded by that have surrounded these individuals out of love. They love these individuals, and as they're trying to pull them out, they're sacrificing bits of themselves. And at one point, they sacrifice so much of themselves for the one that they love that has obviously become this monster in this case, that they themselves have become what they hated. And it's a sad thing that there's a lot of things that take place in this that shows us, all aspects of the different destinies that man has. Of choosing to either walk this road of revenge or sacrificing so much that we become a monster ourselves, or using our biggest weakness to take care of somebody, to care for somebody. And so again, that's just kind of the overarching themes that I see that take place in this entire film that I think make the film a beautiful piece of work, even though it's 120 episodes condensed into 2 movies or into 2 hours.
Yeah. I've seen far worse condensation. Is that right? I don't know if that's quite the right word here, but we'll use it. Right. I've seen it done worse.
Right.
Infinitely worse. And the funny thing is, I had gotten a little bit of an impression that might have been the case, but I didn't know going in. I never knew that until you told me in the podcast.
Right.
And now it makes sense because, again, we'll get into this later. There seems like there's a lot thrown in here.
Yeah.
But again, like I've been saying, I just felt like it made the world richer. It felt bigger.
Yeah, absolutely.
The whole idea. That's the thing that's wonderful. I think, honestly, the best science fiction stories are the ones that give you the impression of a bigger universe, but you don't necessarily have to see all of it.
Exactly. And I think that's Matsumoto would
watch that first Star Wars movie. It feels big.
Right.
Even though you're only seeing a piece of it.
Right. Absolutely.
But this is a world with history and places and people, and there's so much going on.
Right.
And but we're focusing on Luke Skywalker, gotta save the princess, and then we gotta destroy the Death Star.
Right.
Which that's another Star Wars parallel in this, because when Tetsuro starts, he has his quest. I'm going to kill Count Mecha.
Right.
And then with 30 or 40 minutes of movie left, he pulls that off.
Right.
And then I'm sitting here, even my buddy Joe, who's watching it with me, we're thinking, what's he going to do for the rest of the movie? He's got 40 minutes left. And then after that, he changes his quest, which he had already kind of intended to do this anyway, which was, I'm going to go to the last planet.
Right.
And I'm going to get a mechanized body. Now it's, I don't want a mechanized body. I don't want to be him.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to go to that planet and I'm going to destroy it, which seems very grandiose. But he's like, I'm going to destroy it. So this people won't be turned into these monsters anymore. Right.
Absolutely.
And then that becomes his drive. And then we get to that planet and we find out that it's run by very terrible beings. So it suddenly feels a little bit more justified. But then Tetsuro, this 15-year-old kid, manages to bring about an apocalypse because that's what we do, because it's sci-fi and we can figure out how to, hit the exhaust port with because that's how Star Wars is.
Hey,
at first
they explain that later.
Which is just, at first it's just, we have to save the princess. Oh, we save the princess. Oh, we have a new quest. You have to go destroy the Death Star. So, and the same thing is here. Kill Count Mecha. Oh, we have to go destroy the Mecha. And we're going to hit it in its little weak spot with, instead of a proton torpedo, it's the magic orb.
Right.
The magic glowing orb.
Oh,
which we will drop at just the right spot, that it will go down to the core somehow. And
well, yep, that's exactly right.
Who would have thought an apocalypse was that easy?
I mean, we're halfway there. We're just looking for somebody to drop an orb right now here in the United States. So
I think they did. It's called the Rona.
Ooh. All right. Oh, I hear the whistle blowing for for the little stop on the train track. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to hear a quick commercial from one of our dear friends.
Crikey, looky there! It's a rare taco-phibian. You rarely see such a... Whoa! Did you see that? A cracking glitz kaiju just chowed down that taco.
But what does that even mean?
It means that when you're done listening to Com Talk, check out the Retro Rewind podcast.
Oh, okay.
All right, so we're back on board the Galaxy Express 39. We almost missed it because Nathan here was trying to pick up kaiju souvenirs for Daggum Jimmy from the Retro Rewind planet.
The Retro Rewind planet?
Oh, yeah, man. That's the home base for Retro Rewind podcast. And so,
Jimmy's excited about that. He has a thing for ships.
Oh, yeah. So,
we call him Jimmy from NASA.
Right. So we're going to
see his Twitter feed. Half of it is retweets about NASA.
I have to wonder what NASA thinks of Jimmy's tweets.
Sometimes too. Where's this crazy guy? Because Jimmy keeps making comments like, "Did you forget I built a spaceship for you in the '80s?"
Oh my gosh! So, what was?
He did have one person who kept calling him insane for thinking aliens are real. I'm like, I'm sorry, but they are.
I mean, did you see the movie? So,
yeah.
Oh man, I like it. But we're gonna make a switch up. We're gonna talk about what we liked and didn't like about Galaxy Express 39. This is kind of where we're gonna get into more of the crux of it. We kind of gave a review of the overall arching theme, which I really think, in my opinion, affects how we view a movie. And I'm curious if it changed how you are going to rate this movie at the end of our conversation. But what are some things that you liked about the film?
Well, actually, one of the things that comes to mind, given how my friend Joe reacted to it, I think it's both a strength and a weakness, because I liked it for this reason. He did not. And I can see how it could be problematic, which is the fact that it crams so much stuff into this. And I'm not necessarily talking about story so much as, well, like, there's a lot of story crammed into this as well, but it's more like there's so many concepts that are thrown in here. Now, the plot is still relatively straightforward. It's a very much here, this is a quest, this is the goal for the quest.
Right.
But there's a lot of stuff that happens in between. Like I said, it's like the Odyssey.
Right.
So, it's like on this island, we fight the Cyclops. On this island, we deal with the Sirens. On this island, except in this case, we go to this planet, we do this. And that's so there's a progression still.
Right.
But it feels episodic in a way. But for me, it made the universe feel bigger.
Right.
And and more interesting. Where for my friend who's just like, there's so much stuff.
But that helps though.
You could go either way with it. I liked it for that reason.
I enjoyed it too because of that, honestly. I like the fact there was so much bigger. And again, when you get into the concepts of Harlock, if you get into the world of Harlock and all that stuff, it becomes even more expansive for you. And I enjoy it because sometimes you watch a movie and it's so thin. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's just a straightforward boop, and you're like, what's happening here? You didn't feel the gravity. I feel like in the film that you felt the gravity of the situation take place. It was a slow film, but because the world was so much bigger, it kind of highlights the aspect of people trying to really figure out what does it mean to be a human being.
Mm-hmm. And we've already kind of talked about this a little bit. I actually, again, my friend Joe had issues with this, but I actually really like the art style.
Yeah.
We started this by talking about how a lot of 70s animes would cut corners.
Mm-hmm.
This movie had money thrown at it.
Yeah.
It had a lot of money thrown at it because they weren't really doing the corner cut techniques in this.
Right.
Now, does it have the fluidity, say, of a Disney movie at the time or any Disney movie? No. But again, within its own unique style, it is incredible.
Right.
The vistas in this, in space, the character design is wonderful.
Right.
I thought, especially, it's interesting. We've been talking about I just realized there's a lot of female characters in this, and they are handled actually, I think, really well. Anime has a bit of a bad rap when it comes to female characters.
Right.
And this, we've already talked about how there might be some stuff in here that might seem a little unsavory, but it's done so tastefully.
Right.
And
it was.
It's not meant for cheap titillation. It's meant to make some sort of a point. It's either meant to shock you at the horror of it,
Mm-hmm.
while also playing into a central theme, or it's meant to highlight something, the beauty of these characters. I don't just mean physically.
Right. Absolutely. And to be fair, Matsumoto, he was known for having basically a single type that he drew his women in the series, and it became a trope, to be honest, for him of all the women. Because if you were to line up all the female characters, they were the same basic body type. They looked basically the same, but the way that he added elements to them, I think, is what changed the characters dramatically. Mattel, she was this, almost Russian doll, hello, comrade type of feel.
Hair down to her ankles.
Right. And so, but
big old blonde hair flowing all the way down.
Right. But she carried her own self like this. Right. Almost. But she carried herself with a sense of.
There's a character in Street Fighter that she looks a lot like. I'm trying to remember what her name is.
I don't know. But Mattel.
Street Fighter 5, and she dresses the same.
Oh, really?
Blonde hair.
I didn't know that. Well, Mattel, she carries herself in such a way of properness, and there's this mystique about her. But then you enter Esmeralda again, same basic body form, but the additions of what's going on with her, the red hair, the way she carries herself, the single scar. You're like, this is a woman you should be afraid of. Like Mattel, you want a hug. You're like, oh, you're a safe person. Esmeralda, like, would you like a Coke, ma'am? Because I don't want to make you mad.
Apparently, it is in the world of this universe. In this universe, if you have a scar, you are automatically, get an automatic plus 20 to your awesomeness.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Scars do that, man. It's just how it is.
Yeah, because I noticed that, like, all of the kind of gritty, scary characters all have scars.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Colleen, that's who it was.
Oh,
that was
okay.
the character I remember.
That's cool.
Colleen.
So I'm with you on the art, though. I think the art was beautiful, and actually, they won an award for the art itself back when the movie first came out in the '70s. So the art, again, if you are okay with examining art in its context, this is not going to win. I don't think this is going to win an art award today, but in the context of the '70s, in the early '80s, it was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
I will tell you right now, I'll take this over a lot of modern anime styles.
Okay.
I'm serious.
Right.
I'm serious. There's a tangibleness to it in a way that you don't get, I think, in a lot of. I think the same way. As wonderful as 3D animation can be.
Yeah.
Come on, I love Pixar. Who doesn't love Pixar? If you hate Pixar, you have no soul. But in every sense of the word, especially the Jewish kind. But
that's funny.
But but the fact that you have to stop and think about it, they didn't have computers. All of this, everything you see, hand drawn.
Right.
I that boggles my mind to think that they put the time into animating every single one of those cells and putting in all those little details.
Right.
It's just astonishing thing. And I don't just feel about like that about Japanese animation. I feel like that about any old animation. The advent of computers, because it's just like, wow, that is so meticulous.
Right. It takes art, it takes skill for back then, and so that's why I think it was beautiful. But again, do you think that's something though, Nathan, that we take an average person who doesn't necessarily understand the concepts of 24 frames equal a second, who doesn't understand the concept of sitting down hand drawing stuff, and you show this film to them, would they appreciate it as much as you and I do right now?
It would depend very much on their taste, and I think their age as well. I've run into a lot of people who have weird stipulations about, like, I won't watch a movie that's older than I am.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, why? I used to work with a guy at one point where he said he didn't watch anime that was more than, I think, 5 years old. Why? He said, because I can't get into the animation style. I was like, do you realize how much stuff you are missing?
I mean, wow, that's okay. I don't understand that mindset myself, but
and there are some people who said they refuse to watch black and white movies. Like, why?
So, like, I think some of it, and to be honest, some of it is stories. We're so used to storytelling. Like people today, they're used to that fast-paced, boom, boom, boom storytelling. Whereas you go back to early 80s, things were slower. You take it even further back, it's a much slower vocal storytelling that takes place. Yeah, and this kind of rides that line between the vocal storytelling and then the action. I think that, like, I mentioned this to you off air a while back. There was another reviewer that I listened to that talked about the film, and he hated it. Like, he hated this film tremendously. And he thought it was slow, it was convoluted. But to be honest, a couple things. One, I think he missed the point of the story, which was it was the story of an action-packed film about a young boy becoming a man, but it was the story of conversation about what does it to mean to be human. But also, he missed the understanding that it's telling a story in a specific way. It's a conversational thing. It's not this swashbuckling, which you think of with Captain Harlock, but it's not that.
I mean, he's a space pirate, right?
Right. And you miss the word space opera. Again, that's what Matsumoto was known for, a space opera. It was a convoluted, drawn-out story. It was actually this term space opera is a play on the old term Western opera or cowboy operas. And so when you have that in mind, the story becomes much more rich, in my opinion.
Well, and operas are meant to be big. They're big and they're dramatic. I mean, you ever tried watching an opera? I mean, it's loud, it's boisterous,
right?
It's larger than life because that's the whole point.
Exactly. So, are there any other interesting aspects about this film that really stuck out to you?
Well, like I've already mentioned, I loved all the concepts that are thrown in it. That really got me excited, and it was a little weird at first, but I liked the juxtaposition. I thought that was really interesting. I always love watching, particularly futuristic science fiction, where they juxtapose something kind of anachronistic into it.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I wrote a short story with starring a character that eventually I wanted to write books about,
mm-hmm.
and it was set like 500 years in the future with a space military. But so you would have all this high-tech stuff, ray guns, and all of the Star Trek, Star Wars paraphernalia you would expect to see.
Right.
But he had a ceremonial saber that was a family heirloom, and he kept it with him the whole time.
Right.
And then uses that instead of the high-tech stuff to kill an alien assassin that was there. So in this movie you have the big spaceship.
Right.
This spaceship, because that's what it is. It's a spaceship.
Right.
And it's designed to look like an old steam locomotive. They even call this out. They as Ben Avery would say, they hang a lampshade on it. And they actually show you, yeah, it looks like a steam engine and it sounds like a steam engine, but on the inside, it's the freaking Enterprise.
Right.
It's got a warp core. I mean, they call it something else.
I think they call
But
it the
show
dark
it to
matter
you
core.
A couple of times. You don't put coal in there. It's it's a warp reactor
Right.
essentially.
Absolutely.
And so I thought that was really interesting. I don't know why that would exist in a universe unless you just had like some eccentric who just thought, hey, how about I make a spaceship that looks like a steam engine, and then this guy Robert Zemeckis will see it and make Back to the Future Part 3.
Yeah, that seems fair. Honestly, I enjoy that aspect too of it. That weird, like, it seems out of place, but it fits so perfectly. But again, that's a trip of Matsumoto. The all the way back to Space Battleship Yamato. The Yamato is a legitimate battleship that Japan had. And
yeah, it was a real battleship in World War II.
Yeah, and it was legendary. And so taking that and go, we're going to put this in space, and doing stuff with it. There's something about it. So Celeste and I, we try to watch every year on 4th of July, which for our international audience, that is the day that the United States celebrates our Declaration of Freedom from the British Empire. But we try to watch a inspiring film on the 4th of July, one that I think every American should, because it brings tears to my eye every time I see it, and that is Independence Day with Will Smith.
Oh, okay. I was bringing up Independence Day, not the movie, but that's the actual proper name for the holiday. So.
Right. So we watched.
Family is weird, and for many years we watched that movie on the 4th of July.
It's a perfect movie.
For a while, we would watch both of them, and then I would be like, yeah. Really let the air out of the balloon on that second one.
Well, that's the thing is, I was going to bring up, like, we watched the second one. So let's try watching the second one. We still haven't finished it. We got about halfway through, and we just weren't feeling it. We need to finish it. But, and
it just doesn't have the energy of the original. Now, I love the world building.
Right. Well, this is why. This is my theory why it doesn't work. Because in the first film, it's so grounded in our natural reality that we know, right? They're getting a crop plane pilot to try to take out the enemy, where they're scrambling. Everything is based in stuff we know. But in the second film, everything is so outside of our realm, so futuristic, that we just like, it's clean. And I think that's why there's this beauty within Yamato and within Galaxy 99, because it's this very base rooted technology that we're familiar with, and that's the appeal for people.
Most definitely, and that's, like I said, I think that's why it works so well, is this strange juxtaposition.
Right.
Once you kind of get over the fact that it looks like a steam engine, you go with it.
Right. And it just feels natural.
The best speculative fiction stories are the ones that they establish their rules.
Mm-hmm.
As if you establish, I know this as a writer of this sort of stuff, you establish your rules early on and you do it really well, people will accept anything.
Oh, absolutely.
Doesn't matter how ridiculous it is.
Right.
They will go with anything you want to throw at them.
Right.
So long as you establish it early and you do it well, and then you're consistent.
Right.
And then if you break those rules, you give a reason why you break those rules.
Right.
And in this one, the movie asks you to believe that there would be a spaceship that looks like a steam locomotive.
Right.
You go with that, you'll go with anything.
Everything's good. So, and I think that's what's interesting, is that there is a asking. We're speculating what life could be like in the future, anyways. There's a podcast I really enjoy called The Untold Podcast, and it's a speculative fiction podcast where every episode is a story that's told from and most of the writers that are in it, if not all the writers, they're Christians, and they're telling these speculative fiction stories, and some of them are just these crazy, far out sci-fi things. During October this past year, he did a series of speculative fictions that carried this horror tone, and it was really, really fascinating to listen to some of these stories. You should check them out. But I think people like that aspect of going, what would it be like for us to look forward? And I think that Galaxy Express really captures that, with the pirate theme, with the ship, and then like even on the planets, like on Titan, it's basically a Western.
Yeah, there's a level of romanticism.
Yeah.
To this, and a romanticism for old things.
Yeah.
The super high tech spaceship looks like a steam engine.
Right.
the first planet they go to is like a Wild West world.
Right.
Things like that. The old and the new kind of blended together.
Right.
And like I said, there's a romanticism to it.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
That's what appeals to the audience.
Yeah.
So well, it's almost like nostalgia.
Yeah.
In a way, but it's not a nostalgia over things that you knew as a kid or growing up. It's more of a nostalgia of old things.
Yeah.
You could be nostalgic for a past time period that you never experienced.
Absolutely. So let me ask something though. We kind of talked about some stuff we liked and really enjoyed it. Was there anything in this like you were just like, I just couldn't stand this? Like it just killed me. I know that one complaint that several people have had over the years, and it bothered me at times, is you had these beautifully drawn images of individuals, but then you cut to kids and it looked like a potato.
Yeah,
it threw me off.
You know what? The one that really freaked me out, and my friend Joe and I cracked jokes about it, which was that poor young Tetsuro must have been a deformed child before puberty or something, because his eyes were amazingly tiny and cycloptically close. I'm just saying. It was a little terrifying at points. We thought he was a deformed child at one point.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's terrible.
Two guys who've seen plenty of anime and are used to like giant eyes
right.
and things like that.
And he had nothing.
What is wrong with this kid? Does he have a birth defect or something?
Well, at one point there's like in the opening scenes where they're running from the cops, he tosses the railway past this other kid, and this kid's running, and I swear, I promise you, the kid running with his arms swinging back, go back and watch it. The kid's running with a white shirt, his arms swing back. He looks like daggum Beavis from Beavis and Butthead. He does. I just kept wondering, Cornholio. I'm like, I was flipping out.
And then another one that almost took me out at points was the movie pays attention to physics until it doesn't want to. So you mentioned the part where Tetsuro fires the gun at Emeraldus's ship,
right?
And that's what she then that her ship starts shooting at the Galaxy Express, and she boards it and all that kind of stuff,
right?
And my first thought was, kid, what are you doing? I've seen enough sci-fi movies to know you don't shoot out a window in space.
Right.
But, apparently space isn't a vacuum in this universe. Because he shoots a hole and nothing happens. Nobody's like, plug the hole or anything like that.
Everyone's real chilled about it. They're like, oh, it's a hole into space.
Shot out the window. So I'm like, why is no one being sucked into space? Also, to use the old joke, it is a very noisy day in space, but that's almost every sci-fi thing has that problem.
Right. Absolutely.
There's explosions in space, and in this case, there's whistles in space, and I'm just like,
right.
Yeah. But I normally wouldn't care so much about the sound because I've learned to accept that.
Right.
Pretty much everything. But then they do things like, but then I have to start asking questions like, why is there steam and smoke coming out of this thing when it's like the Starship Enterprise as a train? Is the smoke and the steam just for show? Or is that actual exhaust of some kind? I don't understand.
Right.
I'm asking questions that you're probably not supposed to ask.
Right.
You're just
because
of the romanticism of it.
Right.
But I'm just,
they don't explain in this.
There were points where my romanticist brain and my sci-fi brain were bashing into each other.
Well, they kind of explain a little bit of actually what the smoke thing was. They mentioned it was a dark matter dry core is what it was using, right? Well, in other Harlockian lore, the dark matter core releases this black plume around it. And so Harlock's ship is actually powered by it. And so he comes like in this massive black smoke that just is terrifying as all get out. Because all of a sudden you just this black plume in space, and all of a sudden this giant skull's coming out of it. It's terrifying, but awesome. It's legit. And it's the front of his ship is that big skull. And so if you're in the space, you're like, oh, that's dark matter drive, probably. If you're not, though, and that's one of the things I disliked about it, is that it relied too heavily on you understanding the world of Harlock to be able to get the small things.
it, but like I said, there were still questions I was asking because this wasn't the only thing I can think of in American animation that's anywhere close to this.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, a Disney movie. We were talking about this earlier, but it's a Disney movie. No, it's so underrated.
Yeah.
And I actually think a lot Treasure Planet.
Yeah.
Where they established very early on that this is not your typical science fiction. We're going to have sailing ships in space.
Right.
Okay. So they built this very fantastical sci-fi universe, but because they immediately immerse you in this, and that's just everything is like in this is just presented as normal. This is how the universe is. You learn to go along with it, even though it makes no sense.
Exactly.
From a scientific, realistic, even sci-fi sort of concept.
Right.
But the idea was that this was supposed to be like if Robert Louis Stevenson actually wrote science fiction in his time, what would it be like?
Right.
And so that's what they did. And I love the fact that it was just pure imagination at that point.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a lot of that in this, but whereas with Treasure Planet, it was completely fantastical, and then this one is trying to kind of have one foot on each side of the fence.
Right.
It's trying to straddle it a little bit. That again, it kind of brings a little bit of a conflict in my head about what I'm willing to accept and what I'm not willing to accept.
Yeah, absolutely, and it does that. And I think that posing those against Treasure Planet, which by the way, for those of you who follow us on Twitter, Celeste and I live tweeted watching Treasure Planet a couple months ago. Celeste had never seen Treasure Planet until a couple months ago, ever in her entire life. So I had to expose her to it.
You know what's kind of great? It's actually a legitimately good adaptation of that book.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
You need to think about that. It's a legitimately good adaptation of the book.
Oh my gosh. So, but when you put this together, really you could do so much more. But again, Matsumoto was doing something grander within the manga and the anime. And that's one of I think that's my last complaint that I'd have is that it is condensed. And I think they did a beautiful job. I think they did a good job constructing a story around the central theme that they were trying to put out there. But it does leave you jarred at times. You're like, what? Where am I? Why are we doing this? How is this happening? Yeah. And so you almost have to accept more than you should.
The transitions are a little sharp.
Yeah, exactly.
You might get a little bit of whiplash, proverbially speaking.
Yeah.
Which apparently my friend Joe did. I was able to navigate it a little bit better.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's funny. Well, let's bring this down though. And it's the final question we have to ask ourselves. Is this film worth recommending to other people or not?
I would.
You would? Why?
I would recommend this. Because I think I love the old-fashionedness of this. I love that like we've been talking about before, the themes. The art style is very unique. It's very much of its era, but it's also, I think, very timeless. Mm-hmm. And it's in a lot of ways very unique.
Right.
If you enjoy Captain Harlock, you should watch this. I have a brother, my brother Jared, who is really into. He's an artist and he loves animation and he loves trains. And I told him, I was like, we need to watch this movie together because I think you would really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Or you can watch the first one and then we'll watch the sequel again.
Right.
Something like that.
Which I still want to see the sequel.
There is a sequel. It's called Adieu, Galaxy Express 999. I say 999.
Right. So.
So I would recommend it. Now I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to everybody I knew because I do think you have to enjoy certain things. Mm-hmm. Enjoy old-fashioned science fiction. You have to enjoy anime specifically. Your palette has to include old school anime. You can't be one of the people who's like, I don't watch anime more than 10 years old. At which point I'm just like, I feel sorry for you.
Right.
But so there are caveats to it, but I would wholeheartedly recommend it to people.
Awesome.
I'm curious to see the show now too. I would wonder what the show.
I watched some clips of the show, and it's a lot choppier than the movie as far as the animation style. But again, they're running on a budget. They're trying to kick through some things, so it's a lot harder to do the show itself. But as far as the movie, I'm kind of in the same boat with you. Depending on who I'm talking to, if they're into anime already, if they already have the mindset of what old school anime looks like, and if there's somebody that doesn't mind discourse in a film, If they're one of those people like, I need just like lots of explosions, bang, quick action, this is probably not the film for them. But there's somebody that's looking for maybe a conversation piece, a film that's trying to talk to you about something. I think it's a great film to watch.
Yeah, and I do think one of the things that helps is that there's enough anime out there that is like that, that I think people are willing to accept it. Now they're the polar opposite of well. I mean, for every ghost in a shell, there's Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
But
it's a true story. Yeah, you definitely have to. There's a balance of everything. Obviously, I would say this though: if you're somebody who was getting into anime and I wanted to steer them towards Galaxy 999, I would say, hey, check out Cosmo Warrior. Check out the modern renditions of Captain Harlock, and lead them into the world, and then take them to Galaxy Express 999. I feel like that's a better way because then you have a world building. Like I would even send them to Arcadia of My Youth. That's a slow film. It really is. It's interesting, but it's a slow, kind of confusing film. So I would tell them to do that and then lead them to 999.
I'll take your word on that because I haven't seen any of those.
Check them out, man. They're I think it's free on Prime actually. Cosmo Warrior, and it's interesting. It really is.
No, you can't go wrong with Space Pirates.
I mean, no, you can. You can't go wrong with Space Pirates. There's an anime. I can't remember what it's called right now. It is utter trash, and all they did was they clipped together other animes together to create this really weird story. And then they dubbed it over completely terribly. I think it's Amazon Prime. I'll find it, sent to you later. But it is.
Robotech?
Huh?
Robotech?
No, not Robotech. Robotech
was because I've seen some of Robotech and I like Robotech.
No, it's not Robotech. Robotech's a good example of doing this process. This is something entirely like they robbed from Gundam. They robbed from all kinds of crazy stuff. Like it's terrible.
Okay, then.
I'll find it and send it to you. All right, guys. Well, we're nearing the end of our stop on the Galaxy Express 39, and I'm about to be back home with the rest of you guys here at Com Talk. And it's been a fun time hanging out with you, Nathan. Nathan, for those of us who have hung out for this entire train trip, where can people find you regularly?
You can I'll mention first the podcast. You can go to monsterislandfilmvault.com. That's the website there. You can follow us on like all the social medias now. We're on Twitter. There's a Facebook page, the Instagram. I just started a Twitch channel, but there's nothing on it yet, but I'm planning on it. And there's a YouTube channel where you can listen to some episodes. Occasionally I post some bonus videos on there. At some point I'll probably have videos of my podcast mascots getting into some, crazy shenanigans or something. But they're still busy fighting COVID at this point. I don't mean like they're sick. I mean like they're out trying to get people. Little kaiju. But anyway, so there's all of that. And then, also you can support the podcast on Patreon. I need to make sure I bring that up. I have perks for different levels of support, including bonus audio. If you want to get into that, early access to episodes, behind the scenes stuff, and so there's that. And then for me as an author, you can check out NathanJSMarchand.com. Yes, I had to use my two middle initials. NathanMarchand.com was already taken. I'm going to find that guy. We're going to talk. Yes, I have two middle initials because my parents are crazy. But so there's that. And then you can follow me on Twitter at NathanMarchand7. And I have a professional Facebook page. It's called The Worlds of Nathan Marchand.
Awesome.
So I think that's everything.
Awesome.
All the important stuff.
Right. And all that information.
And I'm contractually obligated to make sure to tell you to also follow my intrepid producer, Jimmy from NASA, at NASA Jimmy. And I had a new clause added to my contract. I now have to tell you to follow the Monster Island Board of Directors on Twitter, which is, Monster Isla BOD?
Right.
That came out of nowhere. I had no idea. I was like, great. Now they're following me on Twitter, too. This is getting weirdly Orwellian.
Oh, my gosh. That's funny. All these links and more will be in the description down below, both on the YouTube version and also in the show notes you'll find on Podbean and hopefully whatever podcast things you're using. I haven't tested to see how much information I can send over with Podbean, but also on our website where we're hosting these also, geekdevotions.com. Nathan, I want to say thank you so much, man, for for housing me on Monster Island for so many weeks and months.
Dude, you're like, well, what was the guy who was stuck on Skull Island?
Oh my gosh, I forgot his name now.
Not Harlow.
Yeah, Harlow.
Hank Harlow?
Yeah, Hank Harlow.
You were Hank Harlow there
Man.
for a couple of months.
Right.
It was
And since you bring that up, if you guys want to check out, I'll have a link in the description down below to check out my episode I did with Nathan, where we talked about Kong Skull Island.
Kong Skull Island. We had a good time.
Oh, yeah. It was a fantastic time.
Skull crawlers and the Vietnam War.
So, but Nathan, thanks so much for being part of the show. Thank you for taking your time out of your busy day and all you do. I really appreciate all you do, man, to be encouraging. I'm telling you guys right now, follow these Twitters because they're hysterical. Like, I work a full-time job and I follow all three of these things, the Jimmy, Monster Island, and also the board of directors. It is hysterical to watch. It's fantastic fun. Just to kind of give me a little chuckle during the day.
Jimmy has a little bit of a habit of getting into, I wanted to say tweet wars, but more like GIF wars. He keeps starting GIF wars with me. It's kind of funny.
Oh gosh, it's good stuff. So now if you guys want to follow us here at Geek Devotions, check out all of our stuff. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just look for Geek Devotions. And also, if you guys do us a favor, we are kicking back up into the podcast game a little bit more, as you can tell. And
I missed your podcast.
I've missed doing them, man. We've just been so busy. But we got some plans. We're going to try to do about twice a month is what Celeste and I are trying to do. Maybe some extra ones thrown in the midst of. And we're trying to bring some people that have some really interesting conversations. Our next upcoming big podcast conversation is going to be me and our good friend Carlos Renfro, where we're going to be talking about book 2 of Superman Smashes the Klan, which, of course, is the comic book adaptation of the 1950s radio drama Superman versus the Clan of the Fiery Cross. And if you haven't seen part 1 yet or listened to part 1, go back in our backlogs. It's there. Also, it's on YouTube. And Carlos is a fantastic guy. I can't wait to talk to him about some of the stuff that's going on.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating story.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Superman is one of my favorite superheroes, so I get a kick out of it.
Oh man, it's so good.
It's such an interesting story, with the radio drama version.
Oh yeah,
because I think it almost didn't get made.
Oh yeah,
and then the guys who wrote it, like they actually went undercover in the real Klan.
Yeah.
It's so insane. Well, so everything that they were showing was real. So it's like exposing this group,
right,
in a Superman story. So it's like Superman's fighting real supervillains.
That's right. It is, and we give all that history in our episode. So if your interest is piqued, go back and check out. Again, I'll have the show notes down below. If Nathan has piqued your interest, because again, this is a real life stuff that gave. Check out the episode we talked about it. It's really fascinating. Also, do us a favor, review us on iTunes and Apple Podcasts, whatever it is, wherever you review podcasts, and share this out. Share our podcast with some people. Let people know, hey, this is interesting. And again, we want to hear from you guys. So reach out to us. Let us know what you thought of this podcast. Nathan, one last time, dude, thank you so much for all you do. I appreciate you, my man. And so, until all you amazing devoted geeks are out there, remember, stay devoted, peace, and love.
Sayonara!